She turned back face in early 1989, but that, like I said, that's neither here nor there. The Midnight Express now were tweeners. They were faces in the matches, but away from the match and doing a lot of the house shows and stuff, they were tweeners, especially in WTBS when the viewership, they were still tweeners. To make a long story short, this will all settle itself in 1988. Or late 1988. I believe it was in November. I still have the footage. It was classic footage, and I'm going to show you a clip of it coming up real fairly soon. You had the Midnight Express were taking on just some jobber team, and eventually you had Jim Cornette come out, and he was approached by Tony Schiavone, and Tony Schiavone said, "Hey, you have a phone call." He answers the phone, and it's none other than Paul E. Dangerously. Like, why the hell Paul E. Dangerously wants to talk to Jim Cornette in November of 1988? Well, I'll tell you why. The reason why is because he was managing the original Midnight Express in Dennis Condrey and Randy Rose. Norville Austin is not a part of this, but it's just those two. And he was managing them in the American Wrestling Association. So eventually, they come to the NWA in the storyline, and they're like, you've been dodging us for months. You've been dodging us for years. You know where Dennis went? Dennis went to the AWA. That's where he is. He wanted to reunite with his co-original member of the Midnight Express. He wanted to be with Randy Rose. So what happens? Guess what happens? Randy Rose and Dennis Condrey come out, and they attack Bobby Eaton, and they attack Stan Lane. And then Paul Lee comes out with his phone, and he attacks Jim Cornette in his white suit, and Jim Cornette bleeds, folks. He bled like a pig, stuffed pig. And before you knew it, the Midnight Express and the original Midnight Express is in an angle, which eventually leads to an assload of great programming, an assload of great promos. This is also a time where Jim Ross is now in the company. I believe he was in the company in late '87 is when he came in through the UWF and Mid-South, and now he's with the NWA and Jim Crockett Promotions, and he does some really, really good commentary on this stuff too on World Championship Wrestling with Tony Schiavone when David Crockett moved aside. So I definitely recommend that you go check that out too. But the Midnight Express and the original Midnight Express were Paul Lee, and then it was basically the words between Paul Lee and Jim Cornette, and it was just fantastic stuff. If you saw this now, you would want to buy Starrcade '88. Just looking at it 3 years later as a 6-year-old, by renting it, I wanted to see it because I was able to see a lot of the build-up through a lot of the tape collection that I had at the time as a youngster. And just stuff is just tremendous to look at. And they have a knockout, drag-out, awesome match at Starrcade of 1988. And I won't spoil it all for you. You got to really check that out. That was some really, really, really special stuff. But that feud eventually leads into 1989, and Jim Cornette now is a face. The Midnight Express are faces. Jim Cornette talking about, I've never really taken a stand in my life, and this time I'm going to take a damn stand, and I'm going to beat the hell. I'm going to beat the hell out of you, Paulie Dangerously. I'm going to fight. And once again, Dennis went AWOL again. And it was right at it was right at the time of Chi-Town Rumble of 1989 in February of '89, the next pay-per-view after Starrcade, and Jack Victory eventually took his place. So you had Jack Victory and Randy Rose against the Midnight Express. Losers would leave the NWA for good. Eventually, they had to leave the NWA because the Midnight Express with Jim Cornette beat them in a 6-man tag team match, and Paul Lee was involved in it too. They had to leave the NWA, but Paul Lee eventually comes back, and then Jim Cornette and Paul Lee once again their feud resurfaces, and they had that famous tuxedo match, I believe, at the Great American Bash of '89, and you know, the Midnight Express are full-fledged faces throughout 1989. Really, when they took a break, they were teaming with Dr. Death Steve Williams for a large amount of 1989, and you know, they really didn't win championship gold in 1989, but it really didn't matter. It was the first time fans had saw this team as a face for a full year. And it was a remarkable time. It really got over, and they pushed a lot of the young heels like the Samoan SWAT team, the SOT. Excuse me, the SWT. You had so many really, really young, fresh heels. I mean, for goodness sakes, even the damn, what did you call them? Damn, I forgot the team. You just had a plethora of really good young tag teams that were around in the late 1980s that the NWA was trying to get over, but there you go. The damn Dynamic Dudes even turned heel in 1989, and Jim Cornette tried to manage them, and that shit didn't work. So there was a plethora of really good young heel teams that the company had, and it was paramount for a team like the Midnight Express to get them over. And keep in mind, this is a time where Ted Turner has bought the company. WCW is now corporate, which would be a big decision why the Midnight Express split in 1990. And I will get to that right after the break. But just keep in mind, NWA is not WCW pretty much, not officially. But they're now corporate owned by Turner. The Rock and Roll Express are not there. They had left in 1987. I believe they were in the AWA at the time. The Four Horsemen have split. Tully and Arn are gone. The Road Warriors will leave eventually the next year, but they really weren't getting much traction at all, and they didn't win a lot of tag team championship matches of that year. They had a short run as World Tag Team Champions, I believe, entering into 1989 before they lost it to the Varsity Club. So you had the Road Warriors as faces now. You had the Midnight Express as faces. You had a Dynamic Dudes faces first turned heels. The Samoan SWAT team, the SST, as a really young heel team managed by Paulie Dangerously. And you had some, other rinky-dink teams as well. And also can't forget the Steiner brothers. And also got a big team in the Fabulous Freebirds, who were faces at the beginning and heels at the end. So there was a lot of decent, really, really good tag teams at WCW at the time. But WCW was clearly making a statement in building heels as tag champions. Kind of a carryover for what they were doing with the Road Warriors. But that's pretty much for now. And when I come back, I'm going to discuss the year of 1990 of the Midnight Express. And this really was the last year for the duo of Bobby Eaton and Stan Lane, the great tag team who had won the United States Tag Team Championship on 3 different occasions, World Tag Team Champions once, and simultaneously holding the U.S. and World Tag Team titles respectively. But check out this next clip, and I'll see you later.